Good morning. My name is Major Hector Alejandro. I'm joined by Lieutenant Commander Liza Doherty, Lieutenant Ada Willis, and Lieutenant Mac Jamison. And together our team assessed media coverage of military sexual assault cases, prevention programs, and responses over the last 15 months.
In total, over those 15 months, we looked at 194 articles. Now that time span began April 22nd of last year and ended July 23rd of this year, just about a week ago. We wanted to understand the current environment and identify gaps and opportunities for the Navy's Chief of Information's news desk. Our client was Lieutenant Commander Patricia Kreuzberger. She is the blue team lead on the news desk, and they handle sexual assault prevention and response messaging. She shared with us Department of Defense Public Affairs guidance, briefing cards, and communication plans. These included programs, events, reports, and cases related to sexual assault prevention and response. This content guided our analysis as we looked at local, national, international, and trade coverage of military assault incidents, policy changes, prevention programs, and survivor support.
To look at this press coverage, our unit of analysis was English written online articles. We looked for Department of Defense and Navy messaging from the documents we received from the blue team, conflicting messages that we saw, leading voices quoted. This included congressional representatives, survivors, and civilian nonprofit organizations, particular incidents mentioned, as well as the overall tone of the article when referring to the Navy's sexual assault prevention and response program. Overall, our coverage was negative, but factual. 51% of our articles were negative. Articles coded as negative were when the journalist referenced the military sexual assault prevention and response program, and they predominantly framed the program as negative. For example, they would describe the program as ineffective or a waste of resources. 47% of the articles were neutral. These articles were primarily factual and did not include any framing. Only 2 of our 194 articles were positive. These articles framed the sexual assault prevention and response programs as helpful or effective.
Our analysis of the media environment included 94 outlets coded, unique outlets. 3/4 of the coverage was categorized as national or trade publications. The national outlets included the New York Times, Washington Post, papers of record. Trade publications included outlets like Military Times publications or Defense One, et cetera. The format for the coverage was evenly split between print and web-based outlets, with a smaller percentage going towards wire service and broadcast outlets. Of those outlets, we coded 149 unique journalists. The average of those journalists wrote 1.4 articles. Top 10% wrote 5 articles. And then the top 3 were Lolita Baldor of the Associated Press. She wrote 13 articles, and 54% of those were negative, 46% neutral. She generally reported at the DoD or legislative level, although she did do some significant reporting on the Vanessa Guillen case. Megan Myers of Military Times wrote 11 articles. 55% of those were negative, 45 neutral. She was also reporting at the DoD and legislative level. Ellen Mitchell of The Hill wrote 8 articles. 25% of hers were negative, by 75% neutral, with the majority of her reporting at DoD and congressional level as well. The things these 3 had in common was that they were fact-based and event-driven. These reporters were reporting on reports that came out, or DoD congressional comments or testimony. And they covered all major events in the period coded and multiple topics around the issue of sexual assault response.
So the most mentioned topics that we did see in our sample were coverage of the Army's response to the disappearance and murder of Specialist Vanessa Guillen, and also military justice reform. Now, we saw this both on the congressional side with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's proposed bill to remove sexual assault cases from the military chain of command. We also saw from SecDef's Independent Review Commission on the DoD side, which also recommends that the DoD take that controversial step. Now, as we looked at voices within the DoD, SecDef Austin was quoted frequently. Chairman Milley of the Joint Chiefs also went on the record, initially advocating to keep military sexual assault cases within the chain of command. Later on, he did provide frank acknowledgement that junior troops do not have a lot of confidence that their leadership will handle this issue properly. Within the branches of the military, Army leadership, both from their chief of staff and from their secretary, were the most outspoken. Now, this is to be expected due to the disappearance and murder of Guillen and the subsequent Fort Hood report, both of which happened during the last year. The Navy did not see similar levels of comments from leadership. Now, this is an opportunity to develop with the stated desire that the client, Lieutenant Commander Kreuzberger, expressed to us about increasing Navy messages in the conversation.
Speaking of Navy messages, we looked at the 43 articles in our sample that were focused on Navy stories. And out of those 43 articles, 16 articles, or 37%, actually contained some of the messages based on what we had gathered from the public affairs guidance. So that meant that 67% of the articles did not have any Navy messaging at all. We coded our messages based on 5 themes, starting with criminal justice, prevention, Navy values, victim support, and reporting. Out of those, victim support and reporting were the least prominent message themes. And we also looked at the conflicting messages. So these are the messages that were saying the opposite of what the Navy was trying to say. And out of those, criminal justice and Navy values were the least prominent conflicting messages. The Navy's conflicting messages were found in 18% of the Navy-specific articles.
So what are our takeaways? What can the Navy learn from this assessment? Viewing this assessment through Coombs's situational crisis communication theory, we found that both the Department of Defense and the Navy used mortification theory to express their messaging. The remediation subset of mortification theory is the organization using apologies and some sort of compensation to try to move the attitude of the target publics. In this situation, that would be medical support or victim advocacy after a sexual assault or harassment. We also found that this remediation messaging is not resonating with congressional representatives, survivors, or other aware publics. Target publics are actually quoted in these articles asking for the rectification subset of the mortification theory. What they want to know is what is being put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Additionally, the Navy lacks presence in the overall communication and is not achieving traditional media coverage of its proactive sexual assault prevention programs. This would lead directly into the rectification theory. Of note, in our analysis, we did not count Navy.mil articles or other owned media because we wanted to see what the external media's tone was in particular. When sexual assault prevention and response programs were covered, it was usually because they were considered tone deaf by external media. An example of this is the teal meal, cake cutting ceremonies for Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Month, or cupcakes. Finally, we did notice that the Navy lacked enduring sexual assault prevention and response communication objectives. We had a lot of good messaging to code with the documents we received from Lieutenant Commander Kreuzberger, but there was no overall goal. What are the objectives and where is the Navy trying to go?
Findings we came up with some recommendations from those. The first of those is improving our information subsidies. We need better events that aren't tone deaf, as Ada alluded to. We found a good example of that in a gray zone research study done by the Don Sapro and Naval Postgraduate School Partner Research Project. This event or research project showed real effort to understand and deal with the problem. It delivered messages in a credible way, and it featured sailors actively discussing the issue in an authentic way, providing their own examples and feedback. The second recommendation we have is to develop a service-wide SAPR comm plan to proactively get involved in the conversation. We want to help build things for these unit commands that are trying to do the right thing with these cake cuttings. Give them a guide that they can use to help with their events, and that would also help engage leading journalists like Lolita Baldour or Megan Myers, give guidance at the unit level, build expectations of appropriate messaging and events, and push for engagement. The third finding we had is to generate real measurable objectives. Suggestions for those might be effort for a percentage shift on earned media and tone from negative to neutral, or a percentage increase in Navy messaging present in these earned media articles. Finally, the big theme of our recommendations is to bridge the say-do gap through an action-based communication strategy. We need to be engaging the public, but doing so in a smart way that shows that we truly understand the issue or are trying to understand the issue in an effective way. In conclusion, thank you for listening to our presentation, and now we'll be open for questions.